Hello and welcome guys, VV Online, and today I'm gonna start a new series called Naruto and the Lolly Kurama Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
How did he find up in this scenario in the first place, falling downward into a massive precipice, almost certainly to his death, and pushed in by none other than his own teacher? He'll never know what went through Jiraiya's mind when he determined that his inability to summon toads justified the use of lethal force. Naruto gulped loudly as he turned his head to the side and gazed into the seemingly infinite blackness, the only light at the end being a dreadfully messy death. He was about to pass away. He was definitely going to pass away. He was about to turn into a mound of mush squashed against the ground. Naruto simply wished that after he died, he would be able to transform into a ghost and torment the perverted old man as a kind of retribution. He closed his eyes and mumbled a prayer before doing a series of hand seals, pressing his quivering hands together. What were they doing this time? Is that a pigeon, a bird, a dog, a monkey, or a ram? No. Is that a pig, a dog, a bird, a ram, or a monkey? No, it wasn't working. Boar, dog. Also, how in the world was he going to conjure that crimson chakra Jiraiya mentioned? He didn't even have a direct line to it. He had flipped about in the air during his tiny little moment of pondering. As the air hurt cruelly on Naruto's skin, his eyes widened. His vision was beginning to dim in the corners. He was losing consciousness. He was beginning to feel the effects of the shock. What chance did he have of becoming Hokage now? His eyes involuntarily closed as he felt a slight numbness sweep over him. The sensation of wind on his body gradually faded as his muscles relaxed. He felt as if a shroud of nothingness had engulfed his body. Perhaps this was what people meant when they told him that individuals normally feel tranquil as they are carried to the Pure Land seconds before they die. When he reopened his eyes, he realized he wasn't falling to his death. As he lay in a shallow river, the stinging sensation of the wind striking him was replaced by the numbing sensation of cold water. It wasn't a river, after all. He was resting in a sewer, surrounded by water. Is this supposed to suggest he's in purgatory? Naruto slowly rose to his feet and peered about through half-lidded eyes. He saw that the heaviness he had felt earlier was dissipating and that it was becoming much easier to walk around. He confirmed that he was in a sewer by looking around. Well, Naruto stated flatly as he continued to glance around, his expression blank. I guess I'm dead then. He had not anticipated himself sounding so monotone. He took a step forward and began walking down the tunnel after recognizing that there was only one way to go. Hopefully he hadn't landed himself in one of those old folktales about dead people walking for the rest of eternity to atone for their sins. Hopefully, you'd think the death god would at least adorn the room. Naruto muttered quietly as he took in his dingy surroundings. Naruto squinted his eyes as the tunnel turned in a different direction, stopping sharply to avoid bashing his face into a wall. Naruto was greeted by an entryway with a wide open gate as he rounded the curve. The doorway led to a considerably larger chamber as you walked in. He was so big that he looked like he was standing at a stadium's entrance. A row of thick metal bars ran across the middle, and smack dab in the midst of those bars was a large piece of paper with the word seal written in large bold characters. Naruto's spine shivered as he realized how big they were. Whatever was hidden behind them had to be enormous. Maybe that's where the death god kept all the dead people's souls. Naruto turned around and began going back, only to have the gate slam shut in his face. Naruto timidly moved his head back to peer at the metal bars, his head shaking slightly. I don't want to die, Naruto said gently, his eyes widening as the volume in his voice returned to normal. I don't want to die. Oh God, why me? Wailed Naruto, dropping to his knees and pulling at his hair with his hands reaching upward. I'm too young to die, exclaims the narrator. I haven't kissed a girl yet, says the narrator. I haven't eaten yet enough ramen. You're kind of pitiful, aren't you, eh? Naruto slowly regained his footing and turned to face the metal bars from which the voice had come. Who do you think you're calling pathetic? You, said the voice, which was deep and menacing at the same time. Naruto didn't even have to look at the creature to notice that it, or whatever it was pointing a finger at him. That's a highly aggressive finger pointing towards you. Naruto lost track of his surroundings and began shrieking at the speaker. I'm not pathetic, responded Naruto, directing his finger back to the source of the voice. You were still there the last time I looked, the voice said. I'm not, exclaims the speaker. You are, says the narrator. I'm not, exclaims the speaker. You are, says the speaker. They continued to argue for a few more seconds before Naruto switched gears. At the very least, I'm not in a cage. Naruto proudly puffed up his chest and smiled triumphantly as he folded his arms. He'd finally silenced that phantom voice. At the very least, I have ramen in my cage. As he returned his gaze to the metal bars, Naruto opened his eyes and let out a soft hum. He then narrowed his eyes and crossed his arms again. As if I'd fall for such a clumsy ruse. Look, just come in here. I promise I won't do anything to damage you. He heard a low growl. Really? Naruto quirked a brow, a gleam of optimism in his eye. At the very least, it's not too horrible. That's still not really convincing. He deflated, and any hope he had evaporated. Look, just get in here before your monkey antics irritate me any further. Who the hell is this guy calling a monkey? Naruto wondered as he took a step forward. All right, I'll come in, Naruto said as he took a step forward. He didn't have much of a choice. The only other way into the room was blocked. It wasn't like he wanted to stand there for the rest of his life. Naruto squinted his eyes once again as he looked up at the paper seal. Maybe he wasn't dead after all. Maybe he'd finally cracked the seal that kept the nine-tailed fox trapped inside of him. That means he was currently walking straight towards the gigantic beast. He wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. As he slipped in between the bars, Naruto mumbled to himself, too late to turn back now. Alright, I'm in. Where are you? Naruto said, squinting his eyes in an attempt to see through the darkness. The voice merely replied, near the back. I can't even tell where the rear is, Naruto responded, having already lost himself and being forced to flail his arms around in an attempt not to collide with anything. Ugh, just stop moving for a second, sighed the voice. A startling flash of light appeared in front of him as he heard someone clap their hands, revealing the owner of the voice. Naruto's eye twitched in response to what he saw. I suppose you were closer than I anticipated. Naruto just stood there, his eyes twitching as he gazed wide-eyed at the apparition. When the figure finally spoke up, the voice he had previously heard, which had sounded deep and frightening, had transformed almost instantly, remaining somewhat deep but considerably more feminine and commanding. Are you just going to stare at me for the rest of your life? Why, you're a girl, Naruto stammered, pointing a finger. Instead of dissolving into a bashful, bubbly mush like a certain Hyuga, the girl gritted her teeth and hissed, well, of course I'm a girl. Did it really take that long for your monkey brain to grasp that? But you're a cute girl, Naruto stuttered loudly, his flush spreading to other regions of his face. Why, you've got long hair and, the girl inquired, her tone irritated. Why, you've got boobs. You're naked, Naruto exclaimed, his eyes widening in surprise as the knowledge hit him like a truck. Yes, well, it shouldn't be a surprise to you, given you've already established that I'm a girl. The girl blushed, her brow furrowing as she raised one arm to cover her chest. You're the nine-tailed fox, aren't you? Naruto crossed his arms after taking a deep breath to regain his composure. Yep, the girl replied flatly, a pair of fox ears springing out of her head between tresses of her red hair, along with a set of 9 black-tipped tails sprouting out of her back. Hey, murmured Naruto, surprised by her casual demeanor. What? The girl exclaimed angrily. Wasn't it apparent enough? Are you supposed to be some big demon fox? Naruto wondered, his shoulders slumping as he stared at the naked girl in front of him. Well, I only used that form to scare you monkeys away so I could have some privacy, she shrugged. Why do you always referring to people as monkeys? Because that's what you are, she stated emphatically. When I look at your type, all I see is a bunch of hairless monkeys dancing around. We're not monkeys, Naruto said, furrowing his brow. Humans and monkeys have nothing in common. She gave him a glance, and Naruto noticed a slight glimmer in one of her gray eyes, as if she was pondering whether or not to argue with him. Isn't it true that monkeys use their hands? Naruto nodded after a little pause. Do humans use their hands? Naruto smiled and nodded. Then you're the same person. To me, you're all apes. However, if you've chosen to be in that shape, don't you utilize your hands? Naruto inquired, his head cocked to the side. Yes, the girl replied. But instead of doing foolish things like peeling bananas or putting my hands together in funny shapes to perform hand seals, I actually use them for essential things. And what are some of the most significant things you do with your hands? They're incredibly useful for when I need to kill a lot of things quickly, the girl replied simply, her lips curving upward into a slight sneer that revealed a small fang. Naruto sat down, folding his arms and giving her a blank expression, even at his significantly reduced height. The girl did not appear to be that tall. If he had been standing, she would have been at least 10 cm shorter than him. My ass is the nine-tailed fox, more along the lines of nine-tailed psycho girl. However, she is kind of cute. Scratch that. She's incredibly cute, says the narrator. Wait, no, says the narrator. Naruto, come to a halt. You're thinking of the nine-tailed fox, right? All well, then. It appears that I have won this argument, the girl stated as he saw the boy go silent, her chest bulging out little as she congratulated herself. No mortal could ever hope to defeat an immortal like myself in a debate. She then let out a laugh that sounded more like a giggle to Naruto. At least that's how it seemed to him. Naruto took a time to notice the girl in front of her now that she was completely captivated by her minor win. She was small, with a figure similar to Sakura's but much shorter, and her hair, which extended down to her upper back, was considerably darker than Sakura's, being dark red in color. Another difference in the girl's height and hair color was that the female was slightly chubbier than Sakura, with a little more meat on her arms, legs, and other locations. The girl had finally stopped laughing, despite the fact that it felt like a minute had passed and she had only truly laughed for 10 seconds. Or did she retain all that air? Also, why did he return to this location? All well, then, what brings my weak little monkey container to his powerful demon tenant now that I've thoroughly destroyed you in debate? The girl began, sweeping her hair to the side with her palm as she took a step towards him. Oh, yes, with a nod, Naruto replied, I need to borrow some of your chakra. Hummed the girl in answer, her chin resting thoughtfully on her hand as she shifted into a thinking stance. Nope. What irritated him the most was the casualness with which she dismissed him. Do you have any idea what's going on? I'm plunging to my doom right now, shouted Naruto loudly before jumping back up. So, you die if I die. The girl's features darkened, and he caught a fleeting glimpse of something he didn't quite understand in her eye before she looked away from him, as if she was truly thinking. But her actual thinking position was far less theatrical than the one she had struck earlier. Her tails curled around her, covering her legs as she continued to think of an answer. It was almost as if they had a life of their own, behaving supportive to their master. After a few moments of profound consideration, the girl said, we don't have to worry about that yet. Last time I looked, I was still sliding off a cliff. Naruto responded. This is your mindscape, the girl said, gesturing to the enormous area around them. Time passes exponentially slower in here. Consider it a fantasy. Things move as quickly as your brain's neurons can fire. It's possible that an hour in here is only a few minutes out there. And neurons. As he said the word, Naruto's tongue curled painfully. Yes, she said with a nod. All right then, Naruto said as he peered around. So how long do we have until I splat on the ground? About half an hour, the girl stated flatly. What are we expected to do for the next half hour? Questioned Naruto, his voice so loud that it made the girl's fox ears twitch in discomfort. There is no such thing as a we. With a chuckle, the girl replied, I'm going to get comfortable and enjoy the next 30 minutes watching you sweat. A luxurious throne formed behind her with a flick of her finger, and the girl sat down and crossed her legs, seemingly unconcerned with her nudity as she observed him with a malicious grin on her face. Naruto gave her an unamused look, his fear of dying overcoming his natural passion for the female form. And he doubted Jiraiya would have come up with a strategy to save his life if you merely put a naked lady in front of him. His spirits were lifted by the amusing concept. Could you tell me your name at the very least? When he posed that inquiry, her attentive look became a glare, and Naruto quirked a brow, wondering whether he had somehow offended her with that simple query. Do you think you have the right to ask me, the nine-tailed fox, a question without my permission? The girl inquired, her 9 tails rearing like serpents by her sides, each glaring at him alongside her. He did. Naruto shrugged. I suppose. Look, monkey, she said as she smashed a small fist on the armrest before rising and crossing her arms. I have never revealed my identity to anyone before, and I refuse to do so now. You don't have to be such a bitch about it, Naruto said, closing his eyes in disappointment. Wait a minute, what did you just say? When Naruto first opened his eyes, he felt a pang of panic in the back of his throat as he noticed the girl's look. There was no mercy, probably a lot of disdain and a few undertones of contempt, and a lot of rage. But sometimes you have these moments where you find yourself simply dismissing the obvious. Ew, I didn't mean it, Naruto replied, defensively raising both hands. You would do well if you treated me with more respect, responded the girl, her look deepening, leading Naruto to metaphorically shrink. You would do well if you treated me with more respect. After all, I'm 1,000 years your senior. You're 1,000 years my senior and you're still shorter than me. Naruto sighed, his comments causing the girl's brow to wrinkle. Slap. His eyes widened as a stinging feeling erupted on his cheek, followed by a little rush of wind across his body, followed by excruciating pain on the side of his face as his other cheek thudded against the floor. How did such a little girl land such a powerful blow? Then the pain hit, and he found himself hugging the side of his face, hoping that the bruises he imagined did not transfer to bruises in real life. Let that serve as a warning to you. Feel glad that this seal prevents me from entirely taking over your body or murdering you, the girl said softly, her foot twitching slightly as she considered kicking him a couple times while he was down. Ugh, you should have used your words instead of smacking me, Naruto grumbled as he staggered back to his feet. Says the knucklehead brat, the girl muttered softly. Hey, I'm not a knucklehead at all. Words don't appear to get through to you the last time I checked. Eesh, Naruto exclaimed in answer. How much longer do we have? She said. 15 minutes. As he wiped the agony out of his cheek, Naruto muttered. I was convinced that more time had gone than that. Well, you were mistaken, the girl stated flatly. What gives you the right to be so cruel? As he turned back to stare at the girl from the corner of his eye, Naruto crossed his arms and asked. She gave him a sidelong glance. Why do I need an excuse to be cruel? Why can't I just like being mean to you? Responded the girl, extending her hand to point a finger at him and then at herself. Liking being mean to me is still kind of a reason, Naruto said. Naruto then averted his gaze, silently murmuring beneath his breath. It's like how everyone enjoys being cruel to me. Did you say something? Speak up, monkey, the girl said as she took a step forward. I didn't say anything, Naruto said, looking at the girl. She furrowed her brow, her dissatisfaction with his lack of response visible on her face, and when she opened her mouth to respond, her voice was frighteningly deep and scary, just as it had been before she changed it. How come you won't tell me what you said? Naruto turned around with a grimace on his face as he did so. I don't want to, she says. Eh? Said the young lady, not used to someone saying no. Ha. Naruto chuckled. As she scowled at him, she crossed her arms and let out a quiet HMPH. Her gaze only intensified when he reacted with a smile. A full, warm smile that spread to both sides of his face. Actually, scratch that. It would have been a nice smile if it wasn't so false. What's the deal with that smile, monkey? Inquired the girl, her voice becoming softer as she neared the conclusion of her sentence. Nothing, Naruto simply replied, his smile intact. She took a step back and sat back down in her small throne, her lips vibrating slightly as she let out a low growl. She didn't like that smile. It wasn't honest, and she wanted to keep calling him out on it. But there was something so heartbreaking about it. Look, brat, you can get rid of the fake smile, she said as she sucked in her air. Being dishonest with each other, especially in our current situation, can only make things worse. His phony smile faded, only for the corner of his lips to gently quiver back up. Why don't you give me your name, since we're both going to be honest here? I mean, you already know mine, right? Naruto remarked, tilting his head to the side. He did not receive a reply. Right, eh? Said the girl, squirming slightly in her position as her toes pressed nervously into the floor. You haven't even heard of my name, have you? Inquired Naruto, causing a flush of pink to erupt on the girl's cheeks. Why would I need to know your name if I could just call you monkey or brat? The girl stammered. Naruto gave her a blank stare, the monotony of his expression hurting her harder than if he had been angry or shouting at her. So, she said audibly as she gulped. So, what's your name? Naruto Uzumaki, as the character is known. No, Ryu. Why does your name remind me of food? The girl asked, pronouncing out the syllables clumsily. I don't know, he shrugged. Since I've already given you my name, why don't you tell me yours? Inquired Naruto, his voice tinged with hope. Absolutely not, says the speaker. After all, why not? As he threw his arms into the air, Naruto asked, his voice becoming louder. Because I don't want to, the girl simply replied, smirking. Is it true that she used his own remarks against him? So, instead of begging me for my name, how about we talk about the cost of my power? What? Shouldn't we be discussing how much it costs for you to live inside of me? I mean, you're trapped inside me after all. Naruto responded angrily. Yes, but what have you got for me? I'm already caught inside of you, and neither of us will be able to change that, she said as she summoned a nail file and began filing at her delicate fingernails. You give me nothing and then expect me to pay you something. As he sat down, Naruto shrank somewhat in his seat. I understand what you and that old man were attempting. You're going to need my help if you want to call that toad, the girl added, her grin becoming larger and larger as she spoke. So, in exchange for your chakra, what do you want? Timidly inquired Naruto, his shoulders drooping in defeat. He awaited a response with bated breath. He raised an eyebrow in response to her silence. Head pats and belly rubs, says the narrator. Eh? Do I have to say it again? Naruto just stared at her blankly. The girl got out of her seat, huffing quietly, and began walking over to him, reaching forward and grabbed his wrist, causing a gasp from him. Head pats and belly rubs, the girl said as she knelt to put his hand to her head before lowering it and placing it against her tummy. It didn't help that she spoke in a childlike manner, over-enunciating every syllable. Did that manage to penetrate your thick monkey skull? Yeah, I got it, he said, yanking her hand away from him and getting up. Well, why did it take you so long? Yes, but why did it take you so long? She inquired. I just didn't anticipate the terrifying nine-tailed fox to be asking for head pats and belly rubs. He shrugged. Well, I'm a girl after all, she exclaimed, proudly puffing up her chest and placing her hands on her hips. I love getting head pats and tummy rubs. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around that, Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his head. But I don't think all girls prefer head pats and belly rubs. Oh well, then, don't compare me to those other ladies. Naruto, the girl grumbled. I may appear to be one of your female monkeys, but I'm not. You could have fooled me, grumbled Naruto, rolling his eyes. You really don't know how to be respectful, do you? Exclaimed the girl, crossing her arms as she gave him a glare. I mean, I watch how you treat all of your superiors, like that elderly man in the white coat, and that white-haired man, and now this present old man you're with. You never show them respect. I don't think Jiraiya deserves my respect, responded Naruto, causing the girl to raise an eyebrow. After all, he's a pervert. Yes, well, she rolled her eyes. Don't you see what I'm getting at? He smiled and nodded. Yes, good, the girl said as she glanced down at him. But since you've decided to insult me once more, I'm going to add foot rubs to the list of things you must do for me if you want to use my power. He said flatly. I also expect you to brush my tails whenever I say so. I'm also Alright, I got it, Naruto exclaimed as he rose up. Right now, I'm falling to my doom. So, could you simply assist me right now and I'll repay you later? Sure, we could always do it that way. She smirked. Finally, he said with a sigh of relief. Now, how am I going to get out of here and summon that toad? She didn't react and instead went up to him, making Naruto more apprehensive as she got closer. What was she doing? She lifted a hand, causing him to recoil. It appeared that the slap earlier had left a mark on him. Then I'll see you later. She then gave him the same head flick as Jiraiya, but instead of flying away, he fainted out. As Naruto regained awareness, his half-lidded eyes widened as he realized he was on the verge of dying again. And he quickly pressed his hands together to begin running through the necessary hand seals to save his life. A pig, a dog, a bird, a monkey, and a ram. Along with his own chakra, he felt a massive pressure explode through his chakra points, much more powerful than his own chakra and sending goosebumps up his spine. He focused, narrowing his eyes. Summoning technique. Ninja art. He shouted out as he activated the method with his hand extended. As an enormous toad emerged out of nowhere, rock cracked and split apart, creating a massive space between the jagged rocks, causing a large thundering sound as huge stalactites dropped to the ground. Naruto fell with a thud on the toad's back, somehow avoiding a splash as the toad's pudgy back engulfed him. Success, yelled Naruto, raising his fist in the air. He blacked out after saying that. He had never felt so exhausted in his entire life. That was the only idea that came to mind when he blacked out. Gamabunta's back, the toad he'd been laying on, had felt so lovely. It felt especially fantastic after riding on its back for the entire day while it hopped around. He didn't have a choice except to pass out. How many times had he passed out on that particular day? Once, I was on the verge of tumbling off a precipice. He had blacked out twice on the toad's back when he initially called it. Once he'd completed rodeoing it, he did it 3 times. It was pure delight to sleep. He had to express his gratitude to the guy who created it. Unfortunately, he was not having a restful night's sleep. He'd been drawn back into his mental landscape to put up with whatever horrors the nine-tailed fox had in store for him once she had him in her hands. What are you doing here? Says the narrator. When he first saw her, that was the first thing she said to him. She'd said it with the coldest tone he'd ever heard. She had also given him a sidelong glance. Overall, he was welcomed back into his mindscape in a hostile manner. As usual, the demon girl sat on her throne with her legs crossed. With its dark metal frame and dark ruby embellishments, the throne was just what you'd expect from a demon. The huge couch on which the girl reclined was the only item that stood out. It made her slightly taller, but not significantly so. The rest of the nine-tailed fox's detention cell was absolutely empty, so it seemed out of place. Speaking about the nine-tailed fox, now that he wasn't afraid of dying, He could finally look her in the eyes without feeling a rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had something to say. She did have a cute appearance. He had called her cute before, but now that he was gazing at her, he could see that she was indeed cute. Her gray eyes were the most endearing feature of her. From where he stood, he could see the tiniest flash of blue in her gray eyes. He might be able to confirm that if he could get closer, but he highly doubted she'd let him get close enough to look into her eyes. Furthermore, that would be extremely scary. Jiraiya would have done it, but Naruto doubted that his wicked teacher would pay such attention to the eyes. The wicked old man would have most certainly been looking at the girl's boobs. Her crimson hair was the next thing that stood out. It was dark and resembled blood in appearance, but not in a horrible sense. When it's red, not when it's that awful dried brown color. It was also long and silky, going all the way to her upper back. Her hair was cut short in the front to cover her chest, which appeared to be planned. That is a blessing from God. He wouldn't be able to contain himself if they weren't covered. He had no desire to have an erection in front of the nine-tailed fox. The humiliation he would experience would almost certainly drive him insane. The girl's expression was also endearing. He would describe it as heart-shaped. She had chubby cheeks that begged to be pinched, as well as a charming little dainty nose that twitched whenever she looked at him. Sakura's forehead was noticeably smaller than hers. Naruto had no idea whether or not this was a good thing. He didn't mind it, though. Her body was the last thing on her mind. Her entire body. Naruto couldn't find the right words to convey it. She appeared frail, as if she had not exercised in a long time. Not that she was overweight. She had a slim figure. She was actually quite slim. She wasn't quite as slender as Sakura, but she was still quite slim. Her body resembled a cross between Sakura and Ino. Not too skinny and not too feminine. He took a deep breath and swallowed quietly. He had a thing for her, at least in terms of the face and physique. In terms of personality, not in the least. Well, perhaps. After all, he liked Sakura's demeanor. Sakura, on the other hand, was a give-and-take kind of girl. This demon girl did nothing but take. He wanted to slap himself for thinking such things about the devil who had practically slaughtered hundreds of people in his hamlet only a few years before. When he returned his gaze to her, he noticed that she was still staring at him. She would have been much cuter if she hadn't been staring him down with daggers, but that could be said about anyone. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he nearly leapt when she eventually spoke again. "You've been staring at me for almost 20 seconds now," she said softly, her tail swishing in front of her as if they were offended by his attention as well. Sorry, I was just thinking and I guess I sorta just looked in your direction," Naruto said, raising his palms defensively and stammered. "Yes, well, if you intend on thinking, then look somewhere else while you do it," she said, her eyes narrowing, clearly doubting his response. Before proceeding, the girl took a little pause. "I can't bear being soiled by your repulsive ape stare." Ouch, that was a painful experience. Now, returning to my original question. "What are you doing here?" "How should I know?" Naruto exclaimed angrily. "I just fainted out and woke up here." Hummed the girl, tilting her head to the side and looking elsewhere. "I had pulled you in back when you were tumbling down the cliff. But not this time." "I don't." He shrugged. "I wasn't talking to you," the girl sharply interjected. "I was thinking out loud. So just shut up for a minute." Naruto hurriedly swallowed whatever comeback he had. Said the girl once again before softly muttering to herself. She found the answer after only a few moments of silent whispering. "The reason you're back in here is that since I pulled you into your mindscape, this is now your default area for your mind to wander to when you're sleeping." He gave her a sidelong glance. "I suppose you can now refer to this area as your dreamscape." He blinked yet again. "Damn it, monkey, if you don't laugh at my joke, I'm going to destroy you," she said, her cheeks blushing slightly as she leaned in close to him. Naruto fixed his gaze on the young lady. He gave out a shaky chuckle as he realized she was serious. Fortunately, the giggle was enough to calm her down, at least for the time being. "Eesh," the girl remarked theatrically, bending backwards and waving a hand in front of her face as if she were on stage. "I put in just the tiniest bit of effort to make you feel less apprehensive in my presence, and all I get is a miserable giggle. No matter," she continued, straightening her back and returning her gaze to him. "It appears that you and I will be spending a lot more time together." Why is that?" Naruto wondered. "Because you're dreaming," the girl explained, rising and quirking her fingers up and down as she uttered dreaming. "The time you're experiencing right now is a lot faster than it is outside your dreamscape." "Do you have to call it dreamscape?" "I don't want to have to remember another name for this place," Naruto said, taking in a breath when she responded with a look. "Yes, I'd like to call it dreamscape, and you'll call it that as well, since when you sleep, you have various dreams. 3 to 5 per night on average. But I have a feeling you'll be in here for a lot longer than that. I'm guessing you'll be here for a few of weeks. A dozen days, exclaimed Naruto, his eyes widening in surprise at her words. Oi, you should be grateful to be able to stay 12 days in my company. I typically kill monkeys like you before they even finish day 1. She grumbled, her brow furrowing as she glared at the youngster in front of her, doing little to hide the disgust in her eyes. He swallowed, and he swallowed loudly. Perhaps it wasn't the best idea to irritate her. He didn't want her to slap him anymore. I didn't mean it like way. Naruto stutters, but I'd be happy to spend 12 days with you. She cocked her head. I'm shocked you realized a dozen meant 12. You didn't appear intelligent enough to know. I'm smarter than I appear, Naruto responded. You certainly do, said the girl, smirking. TCH, Naruto retorted, his arms crossed and an angered grimace on his face as he gazed at the female. Awa, did I hurt your little monkey feelings? The girl questioned, puffing out her cheeks and accentuating her words to sound more childlike. He hid his flush with a shake of his head and said, no, HMPH. The girl grumbled, before quietly whispering to herself, I was sure I'd get a better reply from him. Nothing. I was sure you said something. Naruto responded, cocking his head forward slightly. Well, then, you were mistaken, the girl said flatly. In answer, Naruto murmured softly, his eyes narrowing slightly as he gazed at the female. She just wouldn't stop being obnoxious. You know, I'm still not sure what your name is, and you'll never know my name, the girl simply said, brushing her smooth hair with her palm. A monkey like yourself does not deserve to know or say the majestic syllables that make up my name. With a shrug, Naruto said, I doubt it's so great. I bet it's something really simple. It's wonderful. It's grander than anything you monkeys could come up with, said the girl, leaning forward and laying her hands on the armrests of her throne. I guess you don't want to give me your name because you're embarrassed that it's actually rather lame. My name is not lame, said the girl angrily as she leapt from her seat, her teeth clenched in rage. Could you please put on some clothes? Yelled Naruto, his eyes widening as he caught a full picture of her bare body as her hair flew upward in response to her leaping from her seat. I loathe clothing. They're too limiting, said the girl, her cheeks turning a bright pink as she shouted. Too confining. Huh, I guess so, Naruto said, looking at her. With that said, he began stripping in front of his audience, to their dismay. WWW. Taking off my clothing, Naruto said simply, the corner of his mouth twitching as he suppressed a grin. Why, though? Exclaimed the girl, her blush growing as she continued to stare at him. Because if you can be naked, why can't I? Naruto said, leaning his head to the side and tossing his shirt to the side. Be because you're a monkey, responded the girl, one of her tails rapidly flying forward and snagging the shirt before it fell to the ground before throwing it back at Naruto. But why should I wear them when they're too restricting? Naruto questioned, tipping his head to the side coyly as he caught his shirt. Just put your clothes back on, she raged, raising a clenched fist as she looked at the youngster. With a sheepish expression on his lips, Naruto answered, only if you put some clothes on first. But, ugh, fine, the girl said firmly as she clicked her fingers. She sighed and pulled together a simple dress for herself. A long red scarf and a dark blue kimono with short sleeves and an opening in the back for her tails. She took a step back and gazed down at her new clothes, which she despised. They did not appeal to her, not in the least. When she looked up again, she flinched at the way Naruto was staring at her. See cute, Naruto exclaimed, his eyes expanding slightly as he spoke the word. Shut up, responded the girl, blushing even more now that she was dressed. Stop saying things like that, you idiot. But why? Naruto wondered aloud. Whenever I say things like this, you act all shy and charming instead of acting like a bit. Naruto paused. I'm not going to complete that statement. If you ever call me a bitch again, the girl said with a sigh as she gently eased back into her throne, I will drive my chakra through the seal and overwhelm your chakra points until they burn out. Yeah, well, I'll make sure I don't, Naruto said quietly. Now put on your clothes, grumbled the female in return. Your weirdly strong chest is grossing me off. Fine. Naruto shrugged as he started putting his shirt back on. For a little while, all was silent. Naruto opted to take a seat during this moment. She was a frightening figure from her throne. Not at all. She was as ominous as a person of her stature could possibly be, which was only a tad intimidating. Only inferior creatures need garments. You monkeys would die in the cold without these things. But demons like me would be alright, grumbled the girl as she tugged at her kimono. Clothes aren't all that bad, Naruto retorted, glancing away for a second as he considered the rest of his sentence. We like to use clothes to show off how much money we have and how important we are. Plus, I'm sure you care about how you look to other people. Usually only poor people wear nothing. Clothes make you look more important. He returned his gaze to her and awaited her reaction. I guess, clothes aren't so horrible, she said, crossing her legs and stopping plucking at her kimono. However, I still despise them, Naruto remarked, tilting his head to the side. What don't you hate? I don't dislike a lot of things, the girl replied curtly. Is there anything in particular? Why do you want to know? She said, her arms crossed. It's weird not knowing who I'll be spending the next 12 days with. Plus, you're like the person closest to me, since you're basically sealed inside of me. Naruto replied nervously, halting intermittently during his statements as she tried to talk as gently as possible. Huh? I'm not used to having to hold a conversation for this long, the girl said, thoughtfully placing her hand on her chin. I normally kill monkeys like you before they get a chance to talk to me. Unfortunately, I don't have a choice in doing that with you. So have a seat and I'll tell you about the things I like, the girl added, lowering her hand before stretching her legs out. I'm already sitting, Naruto said, causing the female to roll her eyes. On a seat, that is. There's just one seat available, and you're taking it. Her groan was audible to him. Ugh. Here, the girl said, snapping her fingers to summon a basic stool for him to sit on. He took a good look at the stool, and she was seated on her throne. Then there was the stool. Then she was back on her throne. He then turned to face her. Seriously, you think I'm going to summon something this fancy for you? Responded the girl, her tone questioning. A monkey like you should be grateful that I even put in the effort to summon you anything at all. He sat down, looking at the stool, before frowning and saying, thanks for the chair. Thank you very much. Naruto slid forward in his chair, getting closer to the girl. So what don't you hate? He asked, resting his head on his hands and leaning forward. The fragrance of it is really appealing, the girl said casually before licking her lips. Anything else? Naruto asked, clearing his throat. The screams of those I slaughter. Some monkeys sound extremely pleasant as they scream. They howl on and on while I rip them apart, the girl replied, her palm on her heart in a soft sigh. I have dubbed them howler monkeys. I also enjoy seeing the aftermath of my rampages. Nothing says you dominate the universe like leaving a trail of destruction in your wake. Is there anything you like that doesn't involve killing people? Naruto inquired, his shoulder sagging as he stared at the girl with a puzzled expression. She gave him a sidelong glance. Certainly, she says. And they'd be, says the narrator. Orange, exclaimed the girl, nodding. Orange is my favorite color. Orange? My favorite color is orange, too, Naruto exclaimed. The young lady reddened. Did I say orange? I meant blue, stammered the girl, her blush reaching her ears as she sputtered in front of the boy. Oh, Naruto said quietly. So that's why you made your kimono blue, huh? The girl shook her head frantically. Are there any other things you enjoy? Biting objects, the girl explained, is my go-to because they always have this gratifying crunch to them. Could you kindly refrain from referring to bones as if they were chips? What are chips? She asked, quirking her brow. They're like thin potatoes that you fry up and they're all crunchy and crispy, Naruto replied, drawing a bleg from the female. Oh, monkey food. That sounds disgusting. They're actually not that bad. They can become a little oily, but they taste delicious, Naruto said with a nod. Yes, they're all fine and dandy for monkey taste buds, answered the girl, pushing her chest out and closing her eyes triumphantly. It's been at least a few hundred years since I've eaten something worthy for my sensitive palate, retorted the girl, puffing her chest out and closing her eyes proudly. You're a real picky eater. Huh? No, I'm not picky. I just have standards. Unlike you, she grumbled. Naruto raised a finger and said, I can conceive of a cuisine that will meet your tastes. The girl quirked her brow. And what would that be? Says the narrator. Ramen, exclaimed the girl, tilting her head. Ramen. MHM. Ramen, the most delicious food on the planet, Naruto said repeatedly. The most wonderful cuisine in the world, you say? The girl inquired, her tongue darting outward to lick her lips subconsciously. He gave another nod. Maybe when I get out of here, I'll get some of this ramen you're talking about, the girl mumbled gently. You won't be sorry, Naruto said with a thumbs up and a smile. Well, if it doesn't taste nice, I'll make your people repent for dirtying my tastes by killing 1,000 children, the girl stated, her cheeks growing a bit pink as she looked away. We're talking about food, and all you do is answer by saying how if this or that doesn't happen, then you'll go about killing a bunch of people, Naruto remarked as he gave her a sad expression. I'm not insane, responded the girl, her tails violently swirling around her as she returned his stare. In a way, you are. I am not, says the speaker. In a way, you are. I am not, says the speaker. Are you going to? I am not, says the speaker. Are you going to? I'm not insane. Then why do you go spewing off crap like that? Naruto wondered, turning his head to the side as he posed the inquiry. Because I don't know, the girl said sadly, her ears and tails dropping downward as she spoke. I don't know anything anymore. She deflated somewhat as her body sank into the plush cushions of her seat. I detest being confined here. I want to be outside, out there where I can run around and be free, wailed the girl as she swooned to the side, into a position where she was laying sideways on her throne. And kill people, you might wonder. If it meant I could be free, I'd even give up on that. You should have thought about that before you went on a rampage across Konoha, replied Naruto, crossing his arms and leaning back. It suits you right, getting sealed inside of me for truly attempting to take down my village. As tears accumulated on her eyelashes, the girl sniffed gently, extending a hand to cover her mouth. Wait, are you crying? Says the narrator. And no, she exclaimed, shaking her head. There's only something in my eye. That was a complete fabrication. That was obvious to him as well. When he looked closer, he could see the girl was struggling to hide the tears from streaming down her face. Her cheeks were blowing out and her face was screwed up. It was a stupid move by the nine-tailed fox, he had to acknowledge. On the other hand, the way she blew out her cheeks was kind of cute. Naruto couldn't help but feel a smidgen of shame as a single tear slipped down the side of her face. Whether he was a demon fox or not, he despised making people cry. Perhaps he should try to console her. No, that was a poor decision. She had every right to be upset. He should be yelling at her for all the wrongdoings she had committed. On the other hand, maybe, perhaps not. He moaned and leaned forward gently. Are you all right? Does it appear that I'm okay? Oh, how he wished he hadn't opened his mouth. You're sobbing, after all. Oh, please, 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 please. And no, I'm not, the girl answered, her moment of weakness prompting her to shed even more tears. Come on, it's rather apparent, Naruto said, drawing a teary gaze from the girl. If you confess it, I'll pat your head. Why you will, the girl exclaimed quietly after hearing his words. Naruto smiled as he said, and I'll toss in a couple scratches behind your ears. You're simply trying to catch me off guard with your tempting words, the girl said between clenched teeth, her resolve slipping. His grin widened even more. All right, 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 all right. Oh, okay, Naruto said, getting from his perch and walking over to her throne with a tiny stammer. The girl sat down gently on Naruto's lap after some awkward changing of positions. The lightness of her was the first thing he noticed. Then there was her kimono's amazing softness. His eyes had genuinely expanded at that. Your kimono feels like pillows, said Naruto, restraining himself from rubbing his hands all over the ridiculously smooth cloth. Of course, the girl said, feverishly flushing now that he couldn't see her face. Just the best for me, after all. Yeah, only the best. Naruto nodded slowly, his lips curling upward into an uneasy smile. What are you waiting for? The girl questioned, patting her head. All right, Naruto said, raising his hand and gently placing it on top of the girl's head. God, it's been ages since someone has patted me on the head, the girl said, her lower lip twitching slightly. Has someone ever patted you on the head? Naruto wondered softly as he ran his fingers through her hair. Why yeah, I once held one of you monkeys as a slave and had him brush the fur on my head, the girl said, her tails falling down to wrap around the throne's edges. Oh, what happened to him? Says the narrator. The girl merely replied, he died, before shivering slightly when one of his fingers brushed against one of her ears. How? I was the one who killed him. Why? He wasn't very excellent at his work, Naruto inquired, rubbing her head with both hands. Am I excellent at my job? Why, you're bad at this. I would kill you, but then I'd have no one to pat my head, the girl said, her eyes rolling slightly back into her head as she bit down on her bottom lip. At the very least, I'm better than nothing, Naruto said, rolling his eyes. You're worse than nothing? Why you? Well, I guess I'll have to quit petting your head now. And no, keep patting me. I'm not done being consoled yet. You must truly enjoy head pats, Naruto commented as he scratched behind her ears with both hands, causing them to shiver and twitch. I love them, the girl said, and they're the only thing you monkeys can give me aside from belly rubs and massages. How much longer do I have to do this? For a period of 12 days. What? They're sensitive. You'll tear them off, shrieked the girl as Naruto tugged on her ears. That's the point, exclaims the speaker. Stop pulling on them, says the narrator. No, if why you keep pulling on them, he couldn't recall the last time he had been this jittery. He had to be surrounded by at least 1,000 people. The fact that they were all watching him and Neji didn't help matters. It was stifling to have 1,000 pairs of eyes on you. He looked as if he was drowning in the glances. The more people he took in, the more metaphorical water gathered around him. He enjoyed being the center of attention, but not with this much focus. Naruto shifted his gaze to Neji, his opponent. He swallowed, and he swallowed loudly. The fight that is about to take place will be difficult to win. It was especially tough because it was Neji, the man who had no qualms about beating his own cousin, Hinata, to near death. Neji was a ruthless assassin. At least, that's how Naruto saw him. He had, however, prepared for this fight. He had truly prepared for this fight, unlike every other one before it. After all, he did have 12 days to burn after that mishap with the nine-tailed fox. Let's just say they kept their distance from each other after that. The girl had literally conjured up a cage within a cage to hold him captive for the entire 12 days. It was a cage built by the trapped in order to keep the person who was enslaving her in a cage. It was a cageception, to say the least. The only thing he had to occupy his time for the next 12 days was conversation. He didn't get it on the first day. He'd never met somebody so obstinate before in his life. The girl had practically turned her throne around and had been busy for hours by basic tasks like as mumbling quietly to herself, combing her tails, and filing her nails. That had been the most tedious experience he had ever had. It was so monotonous that he thought puking would be a better option because he wouldn't have to deal with the soul-sucking emptiness that comes with doing nothing. When the female eventually turned around to face him, it was probably the second or third day. He then discovered that her throne could also be used as a spinning office chair. What a fantastically useful throne it was. He wished he was in possession of one. He'd obtain one for his office when he became Hokage. Let's get back to the point. The following was part of the conversation. Are you finally going to talk to me? Ugh. Are you finally going to talk to me? Tsiufufu. It amuses me to see such a tired expression on your face. It was as if the very life was squeezed out of you and then brutally smushed back into you. The girl replied, crossing her legs with a fang-revealing sneer. Sure, yeah, whatever. I'm bored, Naruto answered, his voice hollow and drawn out, not as joyful as it had been a few days before. Well, then, you'll be bored for the rest of your life. That's your punishment for humiliating me, the girl said, laughing lightly as she completed her last comment. Ugh, can we just forget about that? I've only got about 10 or 9 days left in here, and if I don't do something in the next hour, I'm going to die of boredom and take you with me. You humans may die of boredom, she said, her eyes widening and leaning forward in her seat. Yes, us humans are cursed with dying when we get too bored, Naruto said with a smirk concealed before nodding and passionately waving his palm over his face. TCH, lesser species, the girl said, bowing her head for a minute before returning her gaze to Naruto. Fine, I guess it's my job to entertain you, but just know that if you overstep your bounds, I'll destroy you. How am I expected to walk in a place when you've got me trapped in this cage? Naruto inquired, his head cocked to the side. You raise a good point. For a monkey, grumbled the female in response. Whatever. How can I, the mighty nine-tailed fox, entertain my vassal? The girl inquired, her tail slowly and cautiously whirling around her. Well, you're aware of the Chunin exams, aren't you? With a shake of her head, she expressed her dissatisfaction with the situation. Just give me the gist. It's just this exam where a bunch of people fight each other, says the narrator. Thuo, a battle between monkeys. Fine entertainment right there. He noticed her eyes light. I recall making 2 monkeys fight to the death. Then I killed the winner. Yeah, whatever, Naruto grumbled. You do you. I have a fight against someone in a few days. And against whom would you be fighting? Naruto replied, this guy named Neji, before crossing his arms. Oh, said the girl, quirking her head. Yeah, I gotta battle him, Naruto said, nodding. He's an extremely strong person, so I was hoping you could assist me out. Why should I assist you out? She questioned, a hand on her chin smirking at him. It would be hilarious to see you get humiliated. You're a proud person, right? Naruto questioned, eliciting a nod from the girl. You don't enjoy losing fights, right? The only fight I've ever lost was against your damned 4th Hokage. The girl snarled, her brow furrowing as she recalled the man who had sealed her. Doesn't getting beaten up constitute as an indirect loss for you? He saw a twitch in one of her eyes. Huh? I never thought of it that way. It would be humiliating. Even if it was just you getting beaten up? The girl nodded thoughtfully. Very well, I'll lend you a hand in your struggle against that Neji fellow, the girl said, confidently puffing her chest and placing her hands on her hips. Oh, then, says the narrator. However, if you lose, I will never support you again. Yeah, like I'd ever lose to that man. With his insane overpowered quick muscle spasm touch of cousin killing death, Naruto said quietly. There was a brief pause in the conversation. I don't have a clue what any of that implies. I believe it's known as the gentle fist. The gentle fist seems very silly. How can a gentle fist kill cousins? The girl asked before looking into Naruto's eyes. You monkeys make less and less sense to me with each passing generation. How so? You might wonder. Back when all you monkeys did was grunt and howl, that was something I could comprehend. The girl continued, now you've decided to come up with language. Do you know how long it took me to realize that Nine-Tailed Fox was referring to myself? With a shake of his head, Naruto expressed his dissatisfaction with the situation. It's been around 31 years. Says the speaker. Well, you monkeys chose to build villages, and it was much easier for me to travel around when I didn't have to walk around a town. Because the monkeys would all immediately pack up their animal hide shelters whenever I came approaching. Back then, you monkeys had courtesy. The girl groaned. I'd go in. You'd all disperse. It was a basic relationship. Okay. You know how easy it was to kill monkeys when they didn't launch fireballs or toss chunks of rock at you. Well, then you monkeys had to develop chakra-based techniques. Can you tell me how much ease? It's a lot less difficult. There was a brief pause in the conversation. Yes, now that you've seen how much better things were back when you monkeys were more primitive, we can get back to the topic of how I'll be assisting you in beating your opponent in these Chunin exams of yours. With his insane, overpowered, instant muscle spasm, a touch of cousin killing death, gentle fist, the girl coughed. Yeah, Naruto replied uneasily, giving her a bashful smile. All right, I've got an idea, the girl said with a nod. That quickly, Naruto wondered, his head cocked to the side. Yes, all right, so what's the game plan? Knock him out. Knock him out. What? Knock him out. Pardon, I told you to slap him. I heard you the first time, but I have no idea what you mean, exclaimed Naruto, leaping to his feet only to slam his skull into the cage. Oh, HMPH. A suitable punishment for a monkey that dares to speak back to me? The girl said dismissively, turning her head and emitting a harsh HMPH. Ugh, whatever. Why should I slap him? Said Naruto, rubbing the top of his head and clenching his teeth slightly. Why are you even asking that question? The girl responded, her wrinkled brow indicating that she was perplexed. You know how forceful my slaps are, right? She questioned. He shuddered and nodded as he remembered. He had been smacked twice by her in reality, the first for being impolite, and the second for the ear-pulling incident. Then it should be self-evident that the Nine-Tailed Fox's powerful smack would have been transferred to you as my container. I don't think that's how it works, Naruto nervously responded. Why don't you give it a shot? Who are you blaming? The girl responded, humming, it appears that we are the only ones here. Okay. It appears there is no other option. The girl began dramatically before inhaling deeply. You've got to slap me. What? I know it must hurt you to know you have to touch someone as lovely as me, but it has to be done. The girl said dramatically as she let out a faint gasp. But this is the only way for me to establish my point. Are you certain? Yes, and sure. Do it now before I change my mind, the girl said, tilting her head to the side to avoid seeing his hand slam into her before snapping her fingers and dispelling the cage that had encircled Naruto. All well, since you insist, Naruto murmured, a smirk on the corner of his mouth as he rolled up one of his sleeves. Naruto could see the faint telltale symptoms of nervousness as he approached the female. A single droplet of sweat was gently dripping down the side of her head. Her lips were trembling slightly. She hummed to herself in the hopes of calming her anxiety. His grin grew even bigger. It was going to be fantastic. He quickly lowered his hand after raising it. Wait, exclaimed the girl, just in time for him to slam his hand against her cheek and halt it. What? Naruto grumbled impatiently as he peered down at the female, letting out a small huff. Isn't there any other way? The girl inquired, her eyes shimmering slightly as anxious tears collected on her eyelids. Are you telling me that the Nine-Tailed Fox enjoys breaking her word? Naruto asked, turning his head to the side. No, I'm going to slap you, and it's going to hurt. She took a long breath before looking up at him. All right, go ahead and do it. Naruto raised his palm and brought it down quickly towards the girl's face, as he had done previously. Why, BLEGH, exclaims the narrator. She didn't get a chance to finish her statement before Naruto slapped her out of her throne, into the air, and then down with a loud thud. Naruto stared at her for a moment, then at her hand, then back at her, then back at his. Woe is my face, for the pain I feel right now is indescribable, the girl said, her teeth clenched as she pushed herself up off the ground. Are you all right? Do I look okay? Exclaimed the girl, extending both hands to soothe the searing sensation on her cheek as tears began to flow. I don't believe I can go on, moaned the girl, sniffling softly before lightly snapping her fingers, conjuring up a comfortable-looking bed. Do you intend to sleep till the discomfort subsides? Maybe I'll just sleep forever. Maybe then I'll never have to endure such excruciating pain again, the girl said passionately as she swooned into the bed. Monkey, come over here. Why? Do you dare to inquire as to why? Consider it my final dying request. I don't believe you're going to die. I'm not, which is why I asked you to think about it. Now come over here. I'm afraid you're going to try to slap me for vengeance, Naruto said, crossing his arms. No, I don't have the energy to do that. Your slap has completely sapped my strength, the girl said as she rolled on her bed, wrapping the blanket around her like a sushi roll. I just want you to caress the agony in my cheek away. Doesn't this sound a little strange? I do, the girl snarled, her cheeks growing crimson, but the agony isn't going away by itself. Give it some time, Naruto said, I'm sure it'll go gone. Can you just please? She begged softly, pulling her arm out of the blankets and placing it on her cheek. It hurts. I'm still not certain it's a good idea. Here I am, the nine-tailed fox, requesting that you politely stroke her cheek. And this is how you respond. The girl pouted. I'm offended. You would think a monkey would have more regard for an eternal entity such as myself. Fine, Naruto said, narrowing his eyes before rolling them. I mean, the girl blurted out, her blush spreading to her ears as she sought to rectify herself. I mean, of course you will eventually obey my directions. It is only reasonable given that I am clearly immensely better to you in every manner. He glanced at her for a second, puzzled, before shrugging and rolling his eyes and said, whatever, let's just get this over with. Sit here, where I can see you, the girl said, indicating a somewhat empty place on the bed. All right, Naruto said, following the girl's instructions to the letter. All right, now touch my cheek with this, the girl replied as she produced a little bag of ice and handed it to him. He took the ice bag and carefully rubbed it against the cheek he'd smacked. The girl moaned contentedly with each delicate touch as the cool ice calmed the stinging sensation on her cheek. You do a good job, monkey, Naruto grudgingly complimented the female, causing him to roll his eyes. When are you going to quit calling me monkey? I believe you've only called me that once. Monkey only has 2 syllables. Your name has 3. Efficiency is better, the girl pouted. Okay, efficiency, Naruto observed. Well, if we're going to speak about it that way, why can't you tell me your name? I'm sure it has less syllables than nine-tailed fox. It does, the girl said, but why should I tell you my name? She wondered. Perhaps if you give me your name, we can get this thing we've got together past the container and the tenant. What exactly do you mean? Perhaps we could become friends. She gave him a brief glance. She then burst out laughing. It wasn't even gradual. She was staring at him with a straight face 1 second and then laughing so hard that tears began to pool on her eyelashes the next. As her laughing strained her cheeks, she would mix in a few squeaks of agony in between bouts of laughter. I always knew why you monkeys were hilarious, the girl managed to say. Oh, funny. But that, exclaims the narrator. That is hysterical. He could only look at her with an irritated expression on his face. He was aware of a twitch in one of his eyes. He placed the bag of ice on her cheek even harder without thinking. Haha. What the heck are you doing? Haha. Naruto remained silent. Instead, he merely kept pressing the ice bag to her face. Hey, brat, you're starting to irritate me. She was desperate, to be sure. You'd think the nine-tailed fox would be a little more understanding, but you'd be wrong. I'll murder you if you don't stop. Damn it, monkey. I'll kill you if you don't stop. Maybe a little scarier, too. But no. However, she had offered him some strategies for defeating Neji, which might have made the entire 12-day torture of being trapped in his dreamscape worthwhile. Maybe, to see if it would truly work, he'd have to get near enough to Neji to smack him. This brings us full circle to the present. As they cheered loudly in the arena below, the crowd became increasingly agitated. The fight was about to start at any moment. Naruto took a cursory glance at the sleazy-looking proctor, seeing the massive bags beneath his eyes. Why did the guy appear to be so tired? No, that's not it. No, there are no distractions. He needed to concentrate on Neji. Naruto gulped gently, returning his gaze to his opponent. The only sign of emotion on his face was a little smirk, which no doubt meant he was looking forward to pounding the living daylights out of him. What would happen to Naruto, who was not linked to Neji, if he nearly murdered Hinata, who was related to him? Naruto was adamant about not knowing. Get ready, the proctor stated as he took a step back and squatted down on his knees. Before carefully assuming his stance, Naruto stiffened and narrowed his eyes. Neji did the same thing, but his execution was a lot slicker, bordering on perfectionism in the way he flowed into it so simply. When Naruto noticed Neji smirking at him, he was irritated. Neji, along with Sasuke, was at the top of his list of individuals he despised, which was saying something considering how much he despised Sasuke. Begin. What's going on? Crap, he'd been thinking too much, and now Neji was charging at him. Naruto exclaimed, "WO," as he fell backwards, barely in time to avoid a stab to the neck. This individual was attempting to assassinate him. Naruto clenched his teeth. He had no intention of becoming one of those characters in strange action movies who get poked by some unexplained death tap and have their skulls explode. He'd be the one causing people's skulls to burst. All he needed to do was slap Neji. "You're quick, I'll give you that," Neji said as he darted in for a second strike. "And you look like a female," responded Naruto, who took a smidgen of joy in seeing the Hyuga frown at him. "You'll come to regret it." "I don't think I will," Naruto said confidently as he jumped back a few steps and made a hand seal. The strategy was straightforward. Using shadow clones, swarm Neji to the point of exhaustion, then rush in to deliver the fate-sealing doomsday smack. It was an excellent strategy. Maybe multiple shadow clone technique, exclaims the author. It's a good thing they were battling in such a large arena, since there had to be at least 200 Narutos who appeared out of nowhere. The crowd erupted in applause as they appeared out of nowhere. They were blaring so loudly that it was almost deafening. The audience took a long time to quiet down. It took about 20 seconds. Where did they acquire all that air to be able to cheer so loudly? "Don't assume that sheer numbers will give you victory," Neji said, his face unfazed, the corner of his mouth curving upward into an almost ecstatic smile. "For the outcome of this conflict will be determined by fate, and fate has decreed that I will be the victor." "Like hell," responded Naruto, extending his arm as if about to issue a battle command to his soldiers. "By the end of this, you'll be wishing fate hadn't pitted you against me." He waved his arm down and unleashed his clone army on Neji with that. For some weird reason, Naruto felt as though he had been whisked to a galaxy far, far away for the briefest of moments. As Naruto's clones charged towards the Hyuga, he yelled, "You'll never beat all of us." The first wave of clones was quickly wiped out. Neji's gentle fist wiped them out of existence. Despite this, the massive army of clones kept marching forward. Their numbers were so great that their chakra points formed an impenetrable barrier, making it impossible to tell who was the real Naruto. The fact that his Byakugan was not delivering him instant triumph was starting to irritate Neji. On the other hand, Naruto's ego was beginning to soar as a result of the scenario. This was his chance to shine. Neji was preoccupied. It would be so simple for him to sneak up on him. He was suffocating from the excitement. Naruto really just wanted to smack that guy's fate-loving face in the face. Neji deserved it as well. In an attempt to blend in with the Hyuga, Naruto had a couple of his clones jump up with him as he approached them. Naruto said, "I have you now," as he raised his hand. Before Naruto's hand sailed into his face, Neji last saw Naruto's foxy grin flying downhill at him. What is this?" Neji wondered as Naruto's slap made contact with him, the world around him slowing down. How did he beat me? And perhaps destiny isn't all it's cracked up to be. Blegh. That was Neji's sound as he flew off to the side, smashing through many shadow clones until he crashed to the ground and began rolling all the way until he smacked into the wall with a thud. He had attempted to stand but had fallen back down and curled up in a fetal position. One of his hands may or may not have reached for his face in an attempt to relieve the excruciating stinging pain. The audience fell silent. Naruto dissolved his clones, revealing the proctor, who had patiently sat in the same location during the entire match. No one knew how he didn't drown earlier in Naruto's sea. It was a mystery that was best left unsolved. Naruto wins the bout. The huge, screaming cheers of the audience filled the arena once more. Naruto celebrated his triumph by raising his fist in the air and flashing a wide smile at the onlookers. Perhaps this degree of focus wasn't so horrible after all. But let's hope he didn't turn into Sasuke. He was cocky, but not to the point of being arrogant. Unbeknownst to him, another individual was watching him from deep within his dreamscape. Well, she could only observe him through him because she couldn't see him from a third-person perspective. The nine-tailed fox was now seated in a throne that was far less royal than previously. It was now what appeared to be an orange sofa chair with a ton of blankets, rather than being black with red accents. She'd clearly dug herself deep into them, wrapping them all around her and transforming herself into a snuggled-up mountain of blankets with only her face visible. "Wow, you did a great job," the girl quietly said. She paused for a while, looking around before concluding her words. Naruto.
So that's it for today. I will continue this story in another video. So please tell me in the comments if you liked it or not. Till then, we weep offline.